One of the things I love about the Mindthecolor extension is that it gives me the possibility of doing a certain kind of techniques in many different ways. For example, I'm talking about the roti tools inside the Mindthecolor extension that makes available inside Photoshop some classic camera raw tools, like the hue, saturation and lightness sliders for changing primary and secondary colors, or the split toning tool, or even the primary colors tool, the one that you can find into the calibration section of Camera Raw. Now, the nice thing about the roti tools is that we can use them without opening Camera Raw. Let me show you how it works. Here, when I click the roti button, you can see that now I have available all the kind of camera raw tools that I use for changing the color. For example, if I want to make the reds more magenta, I can select the hue and then move the red towards the left. And that's it. Or if I want to make the yellows more orange, I can move the slider to the left. And that's it. Or, for example, and I can do this for all the colors. So if I want the greens, more yellows, there you go. Okay, nice, I would say. And one thing to say is that these commands are actually the real Camera Raw commands. But we can use them inside Photoshop without opening Camera Raw. And of course, this can save some time. Let me show you a real work case, like on an image like this. These tools can be very useful because we can play with many different colors. Now I will click on Reset button. And here, for example, I can add some saturation to the blues. Let me see how it works. Yes, I would say it works. Let me check the aquas. Or I can change the hue, for example, and make the yellows more red, moving the oranges to the left. Oh, nice. And also this one. Maybe too much. Or maybe I can change also the hue of the blues. So I move the slider to the right. And you can see the speed of this tool. The result is shown in a few seconds. Now, going further, I can also change maybe the brightness. So I'm going to click on the luminance button, and maybe I can darken a little bit the blues. Let me see how it works. Nice, very nice. Just a little bit more. And going back to the saturation, I can add some saturation to the oranges. And maybe on the yellows. And now I think I have a better image. So that's before and that's after. Okay, nice, I would say, and I think now you get the idea. Another camera raw tool that we have inside the roti tools is the split toning tool. That is one of the tools that is not available anymore in the latest versions of Camera Raw. Now, let me show you how it works inside the roti tools. I'm going to click on the Reset button and then on the Split Toning button. And here I can try a classic split toning combination, like moving the shadows toward teal. So I'm going to increase the saturation in the shadows just to see the kind of color I'm creating. And then I'm going to move the hue slider. Okay, maybe a color like this. Okay, this is a kind of teal, and I can reduce the saturation like this. And as for the highlights, I can create a kind of orange, you know, the classic teal versus orange look. So I'm going to add the saturation as well here, and then I'm going to move the hue slider. Okay, like this. Maybe I can increase the saturation. Okay, that's before and that's after. Now maybe I can reduce the green saturation in the shadows. And then I can also try to change the balance between the shadows and the highlights. So when I move the slider, the balance slider to the left, you can see that the effect is more present in the shadows. So I'm reducing the orange color in the highlights. Or I can move the balance slider to the right. So the orange color will be much more evident. Maybe just a little bit like this. And a little bit more like this. Okay, and that's before and that's after. And you can see how fast we can do this. Now, switching on a different image like this, I can try to see how this split toning can work on this one. So I'm gonna press run. Okay, maybe this is too much for this image. Or maybe something like this. And also reducing the saturation in the highlights. Okay. And then I'm gonna move this towards the blue. Okay, maybe this can work. Let me increase the saturation here in the shadows. Nice. The dress color doesn't change so much. Let me try to increase saturation. Okay, I like the result, and this is before and this is after. Okay, another possibility can be to use the primary colors command that inside the camera raw are located into the calibration section. Now, this is not the right video to explain how this tool works in camera raw, but for those who already know how it works, I can play with every primary color, and this time I'm gonna not press the reset button to see how the two commands can interact with each other. So let me start, for example, with the green primary, and I'm gonna move the green towards the yellow. That's pretty nice. Maybe even more. Okay, so let's try to move the blue primary. Interesting. Maybe I can add some saturation to the blue. Nice result. And maybe I can switch back to the green. And this way. Okay, maybe this is too red. So I'm gonna move the red primary. So maybe now I can play with the blue luminosity. So I can switch to the luminosity tab and play with the blues. Okay. I think this is nice. I gain some detail in the dress. And that's before and that's after. Maybe I can go back into the split toning and add some green. Again, before and after. Okay, so as we have seen, we can combine together all these kind of commands, like the hue, saturation and lightness, together with the split toning and also the primary color tool. Remember, for combining everything together, you must not click on the reset button, so you will have a very nice effects. But there's more, because we can use the roti tools in combination with the mask. And let me show you how this works. On an image like this, for example, the first option can be to create a rough selection of the face, maybe something like this. Not very precise. And then I can apply a feather to this selection, maybe around 50 or even 60 pixels. Then I can invert the selection, and I'm gonna press the reset button, And maybe I can, for example, go into the saturation tab and desaturate the skin tone. Like this. Okay, I'm going to hide the selection so I can see the changes. Well, I would say a nice effect. And as you can see, the selection remains active when I change all the parameters inside here. And I'm going to choose different options. For example, I can go into the split toning section, and maybe I'm going to add some coldness to the highlights now. Okay, let's increase the saturation and then move this like this. Maybe more cyan. Okay. And also some saturation. Okay. Now, as for the shadows, I can push the shadows towards the blue also. Something like this. Okay, maybe this is too much. Of course, I'm playing just to see what we can do here. But this can bring nice possibilities when combined together with the luminosity mask, for example. So I'm going to throw this layer. I'm going to load, for example, the L1 luminosity 1 selection. And I'm going to press run and see what we have. Let me hide the selection. Okay, that's a nice effect. Or maybe I can run the lmask command and run the roti tools and then apply a mask, and with the apply image I can choose which luminosity mask I need. For example, this is for the lightness. Let's check, let's try as light 2, or maybe I can use also a darkness luminosity mask. Well, you see, the effect is pretty nice. Let's try as dark 2. Okay, I'm gonna choose this one. So this is the mask I'm using for the camera raw tools, but I think now you get the idea. One last option I would like to show you is the duplicate button here. And this button creates a low resolution duplicate of the image. This can be useful when you have a very large file like this one. For example, if I click on the info palette, you can see how big this file is. And you want to play with the roti options. Let's say I want to change the red's hue towards the orange. So I'm going to move the slider to the right. And now you can see what can happen. Actually, the roti tools are using the camera raw engine inside Photoshop to create the effects we want. And this can take some time when the file is very big. Depending on the machine you have, Photoshop can take some time to prepare for the filter and then to apply the filter itself. Of course, in this way, it's going to take too much time for me to reach the result I want. So when I click, I'm going to throw this layer, and when I click on the dupe button, I have a low resolution, very low resolution copy of the file on which I can play almost in real time. So if I move this slider now, you can see how fast the changes are made. I'm going to move the oranges now towards the left, and maybe the yellows, okay, towards the reds. Okay, if this is the result I want, I can now go back in my original file and press the run button. And then I have my result applied to my high resolution file. And this, of course, can really speed up your workflow, especially with this kind of files. And this is not so uncommon today, because we have many cameras, large format cameras, that can generate very high resolution files. Now, I think you get the idea. All these tools are another weapon you can add to the arsenal of the color tools available inside the Mindthecolor extension. They are fast, unless you have a very huge file. They're easy to use, flexible, you can combine them together. And also, if you are a typical camera raw guy, I think you're gonna love the possibility of using some of the color tools of Camera Raw directly in Photoshop. I mean, of course, without opening Camera Raw at all.